Hey, John Gilroy here. In a world full of artificial intelligence today, how to apply AI to proposal writing. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guest today is Vishwas Lele. He's co-founder and CEO of a company called pWin.ai. And Vishwas, the last time I saw you, we were sitting in a barbecue place in Percival, Merritt, and recording a podcast. That was back in May, wasn't it?
That was awesome, John. Podcast was awesome. So we have come a long way since then. Thank you for having me back.
Well, here's the surprise, is that I've known Vishwas for 20 years, and he's got this startup company. So, hey, let's talk about your startup. It turns out that of all the hundreds of podcasts I've done in 2024, he's like in the top 10. I mean, what's going on here, Vishwas? You got the magic sauce? Are you giving away money, or what's the magic?
Well, John, let's talk more, get into it, and let's just talk about what we have learned.
Yeah. Well, what I learned is that you look at this technology from 40,000 feet. Okay, AI is affecting everything. We all know that. And everyone's in GI, and all the students in school are using GenAI to do the reports, and all the same nonsense is vacuumed up. And some people are going to be creative, and they're saying, how can we apply artificial intelligence to this difficult job of proposal writing? And guess what? There are people who are writing proposals for the federal government that are they're sitting in their basement, they put together ChatGPT and put together a proposal based on that. My, what could possibly go wrong? This is the wrong way to approach, isn't it?
Well, a few things could go wrong. And I'm here to tell you, John, that using ChatGPT or Claude is a productivity benefit. So I'm not saying those tools are not good. But when we are talking specifically about proposal writing, there are a few things that could go wrong. One of them is hallucinations or incorrect or inaccurate information, John. Right? These models can hallucinate even when you tell them not to, even when you tell them, hey, focus on this text, they can hallucinate. The other part, which is not commonly known, if you're going to ChatGPT and asking for a paragraph or a page of content, that may be fine. You may be able to quickly eyeball it. But when you're writing long form text, that's when the problems begin, right? You get content that has overuse of cliches, which the government looks down upon, overly pompous code, self-congratulatory, or worse, loss of coherence from one paragraph to another, right? So if you're doing proposal writing, which is typically a long-form thing, then you're dealing with this problem. And then final thing I would say is these models today, and we will talk about some of the innovations that are going in, but today if you went to ChatGPT and said, wait a minute, ChatGPT, this is an important task. Please take 5 minutes to give me an answer. It will not know what to do with the 4 minutes, 59.5 seconds. It will just still give you an answer in 3 seconds, right? Yeah. And writing proposals, and for all the proposal writers in your audience who are listening today, they realize that proposal writing is a hard thing to do. You have to balance so many things, and it requires reasoning. So these are some of the things that you have to take into account when you're thinking about proposal writing.
Yeah. I got a T-shirt for you. You can do the company T-shirt. And I heard this at a conference, so it's not mine. It says, AI is always confident, but not always correct. This is the problem you have, isn't it?
That's a great T-shirt. Done.
Okay, so we define the problem, Mm-hmm. Some people are using the wrong tool for the wrong application. And so I imagine a year ago you came up with an idea, you partnered with Shipley and said, hey, I got a better mousetrap. Maybe you can put together something and help these people be successful with their proposal writing. So what is the whole value proposition behind pWin.ai?
So John, what we have tried to do, and as I explained in my earlier answer to your question about, dealing with hallucination, for example, from the very beginning, we have been very concerned about responsible AI principles. And we have always generated hallucination report along with anything we generate. What does that mean? Anytime you make a claim, we take that claim, we validate it against your knowledge repository to say, hey, are you sure you've done a 50-node SharePoint migration? We can't even find a 10-node migration, right? Ultimately, you have to take this information, retrieve that information, and validate for yourself, right? What we are doing is we are giving you a report which can help you write more accurate proposal. But more than that, John, the two other things that I would say is, I talked earlier about uninspired writing. That comes from not having all of the context. That comes from, having a shallow interaction with ChatGPT or Claude, right? We have come up with a model where you have an explicit notion, and we call it the flight plan because we call ourselves the co-pilot for proposal writers. You have the notion of a flight plan where you set the vision. John, you and I both know that no RFPs can be won without setting a vision. And that vision is not just for winning, that vision is also for how AI is going to produce content for you. And the third thing I would say is domain expertise is key, writing best practices, and partnering with the gold standard that is out there, Shipley, 50-year-old company that has defined proposal writing. Those three things together really have effectively allowed us to create a tool that is more effective than just using any other tool or going to ChatGPT, as you said.
Yeah, I looked up Shipley this morning. They started in 1972. They've been around all this time. They've done hundreds of proposals. I'm sure they've done proposals or helped companies write proposals for donut shops in Chicago and law firms in Boston. But here we are in the Washington, D.C. area, and the federal government has unique challenges. So let's not talk about Vishwas's donuts. Let's talk about the unique challenges proposal writers have right here for the federal government.
Sure. That's a very important question. Of course, we start with security, right? And we are talking about not just companies' documents, but even some of these RFP documents have secure, classified, or what we call CUI, controlled unclassified content. So you can't just take those documents and store them or work with them in a system that is not CMMC level 2 certified. So one is secure handling of information, right? Second is, of course, understanding federal acquisition regulation is a complex set of framework. So you have to understand that all of the importance that we have talked about, John, about hallucination and accuracy is very important, right? Using these tools as a shared responsibility model where you are taking AI as a tool, as an assistant, but then you're applying your own expertise on top of that to make sure that your proposal is compliant. And the final thing I'll say, John, and this is a challenge and is an advantage as well. And why is it a challenge? So today you get these solicitation documents that can be multiple documents. They have sections L, M, and C, and evaluation criteria and all of that, right, John? So today what happens typically is you run a keyword search across them. You say, give me all the statements which is shall and must, and then those are important compliance statements for you, and you go about answering that question. The challenge, John, is that creates a lot of noise, right? Just looking for those keywords. So that's the challenge. AI can now come in and start to comprehend these instructions. That's an advantage. But then in many cases, these instructions can be overlapping, can be conflicting, right? And again, a human judgment comes in. So some of these are important considerations when you're working with federal government RFPs, John.
Yeah, and the phrase that pays is CMMC, and it also, your product runs on a FedRAMP platform. So this is like basics for people writing proposals. And all of a sudden that we're down the funnel, we can talk about more serious things. And I think it's one of the hardest things I have to do is keep up with AI. I mean, you could say it changes I was in an interview, it changed every 6 months. He goes, John, changed every 6 weeks, 6 months, how do you, don't put anything in writing because it's changing so quick and fast. So here we are in January of 2025. Everyone's talking about the Super Bowl and the next time they can go to the beach in the summer or something. So what developments do you see lying ahead in 2025 for this whole evolution of AI?
Yeah, very important milestone, John, as we enter 2025. Great stories coming out in 2024, but there was an important subtext to all of that, which is the performance of these models at a certain level is plateauing, right? You just can't throw more hardware and more training data and expect better performance. So what we are seeing in 2025, and there was a very important announcement from OpenAI late December, where they are thinking about reasoning models. So, hey, I gave you a task to work on. Rather than just going and trying to answer that as fast as possible, can you take a step back, AI, think about what approaches you could go down on, evaluate those approaches. So we are seeing this evolution of reasoning that is going to be very important, right? The other thing is, if throwing more hardware is not going to be a scalable gain, then what do we do? The other aspect, John, is that when you go up to ask a question, so I'm not talking about the training time infrastructure, when you go ask a question, now you have the flexibility to turn a knob and say, do you want this answer to be in a low compute, a medium compute, or a high compute mode? And John, are you willing to pay $4 per task? Are you willing to pay $20 per task? Or are you willing to pay $2,000 per task, right? And if the task is highly critical, is it worth paying $2,000 per task? So these are the kinds of questions that we are getting into. The final thing I'll say is you're absolutely right. These models are changing all the time. And so is the prompt engineering. You had asked me earlier, what is different about your tool, Vishwas? And I said, we generate all of the prompts for people. Why? Because in order to get the most out of generative AI, you need to optimize your prompts. That's known, right? If you're trying to get to the top 5% of the performance, you have to think about your prompts. But the challenge is that you can't just teach every proposal writer all of the prompt engineering. They don't have time. They're busy folks, right? And also the prompt engineering is changing. Let's just take an example. I talked about how these models are now reasoning, right? So if you were writing prompts in 2024 fall and you're putting chain of thought, like where you're telling the model how to think, if you take that prompt and run it on a model that already does reasoning, then that chain of thought will not really apply. So evolution and thinking is very important as well. So these are some of the things. Very excited about the changes. In some ways, John, I feel vindicated that we started out with a model, and you asked me this question back in May. It takes us minutes or hours to generate content, and sometimes people say, "Hey, why is it taking so long? I will go to ChatGPT; it gives me in 1 or 2 seconds." Well, we have always said that we are a thoughtful co-pilot, and we were doing that reasoning, a domain-specific reasoning for our customers. And great to see that capability being incorporated into the models as well.
Yeah. If you talk to the people at the DoD, they talk something about the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base, 300,000 companies, and all these companies are putting together proposals and trying to figure out and making mistakes, and they may want to learn more. Now, I think you folks you partner with Shipley, you put together the webinars. There's someone coming up at the end of the month here. What's coming up?
There's one coming up about the state of AI and proposal writing that's coming up, where we'll go into a lot more details about these questions that we are discussing here. So I encourage your listeners to go listen.
So if you're walking your dog or doing pull-ups at the gym and listening to this, you can go to federaltechpodcast.com and type in episode 211, and then you get a link to this. It's called State of AI in Proposal Development. Now, this is like the yin and the yang. This is the best. This is like young startup Vishwas and Shipley. It's like the best of both worlds, isn't it? It's like, good experience and the leading edge stuff. So it's a good combo, isn't it?
Well, I hope so. And we have seen a lot of John, we've seen a lot of interest. The number of registrations are off the charts, and I encourage you to go see the podcast for yourself or the webinar for yourself.
Okay, I get to use yin and yang. I studied Chinese philosophy as a young guy, and I'll just touch on it again here. So the other part, you do the proposal. What about the other side of the table, the government role? And so the federal government, how are they adapting to proposals in AI? That's
an interesting question. So one is, what is government doing? We are, of course, helping companies. Our goal is to help companies be most effective at going after these opportunities and grow at the same time. Take their capabilities, be able to be in a position to apply for this work, to represent themselves well. That's our goal. And by doing so, we think that we are leveling the playing field in the terms of getting the government better response to the solicitations that they're putting out. It's too expensive, too cumbersome to put that out, so we are helping in that space. I think your question is twofold. What is the government regulation as far as the AI use is concerned? And then I think your question, if I'm correct, John, on the other side, what is government doing in terms of using AI towards evaluation and collation of these proposals, right? Am I get this right? So let me talk about the second part here. The second part here is, of course, we saw the executive order that came out from the White House in October 2023, did not specifically address procurement, but you can see that there may be some implication in the procurement area. Interestingly, Veteran Affairs, there's a story out there about claims processing, again, not directly related to procurement, but you can see that the wheels of the federal government turning in this area and using generative AI. And one story that I'll point out is from Army, came out just in October of 2024, very recent. They announced a program called Calibrate AI, where they're exploring innovative applications of generative AI. And the press release said that applications included acquisition activities designed to enhance efficiency and accuracy of the information retrieved and analyzed. So those are some of the aspects that you can see the federal government doing in terms of using generative AI as far as acquisition activities are concerned.
Yeah, I made a silly statement earlier about Vishwas's Donuts or something, and I'm sure if I was doing a proposal for Vishwas's Donuts, we're just focused on making money and optimizing profit. Now, with the federal government, there's a little tiny concern here called security. And so what about security and using artificial intelligence for proposals? I mean, it seems like that they're going to want to vet. They can say, no, wait a minute here. Well, what are you doing? Now, we talked about SameMC and FedRAMP, but that's really just basic framework for it, huh?
Right. So John, of course, the CMMC will tell you that, hey, are you being responsible for the controlled unclassified information, right? Are you being careful with that? So that's one aspect of it. But you're also talking about, when you're working with the government, you're also talking about ethical issues about who is writing this proposal, right? And we are seeing this, if you look at NASA SOUP, they added a stipulation that if you're using generative AI, you need to disclose that, just as you need to disclose if you use consultants to write a proposal, right? We are seeing that happen. John, we have taken this approach, which we call the no authorship principle, right? It is based on responsible AI principles. First and foremost, we source all the content based on your core competencies, your past performance, your CPARs, your past proposals. So number one, we are as good as the quality of work you have done. We are as good as the quality of technical SMEs you have and their creative ideas, right? That's number one. Second is, by producing reports like the hallucination report, we're trying to make sure that we point out things, your proposals are accurate. We are generating reports related to compliance, making sure that you address the requirements completely. And the final thing that's equally important is we provide very detailed citation report. Sometimes you go to these chatbots, they give you a URL to the source of that document, but that's a big document. We provide a citation report where we say, hey, we use these two past performances from this documents, and they're not just at the document level, but at which section of that document did we use, so that it is easier for a proposal writer to go validate that information against the source.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of my heroes is a guy named Neil Patel, and he, as a marketing guy, NP Digital, he's a multi-billionaire, and he tests everything out. And he says, well, how can I use AI for marketing? And he tested just AI-generated content and then human-generated content, and then AI content that combined both. And guess what he found? He found that humans can outperform AI in marketing. However, if you take a human and combine it with some AI capabilities, then you get the edge. And I think that's what I'm reading between the lines here, is that it's great. But hey, don't jump the gun here. Just hold on, buddy. And if you can guide it, and maybe, remember, you go bowling and you have those little guide things for bowling, it's fine, but you got to, within these guidelines, they can work. And so I think that's what you're talking about, authorship and artificial intelligence and proposal writing, because you got to have that human punch.
That's absolutely right. John, I would say that there's a very important concept about how you are interacting with AI. Right. And studies after studies, especially in academia, have shown that people have a shallow interaction with these AI models. People go to the AI models and say, hey, just summarize this. Hey, give me just 5 bullets that I can use. What we are finding is that when people have a critical interaction where they are being reflective about, oh, the AI really can't do this for me. Let me set the tone for what I want. Let me enlist or enumerate the things that I want AI to include. Let me read what AI generated and let me change that. Let me have a conversation with that. These are the kinds of things that we call critical interaction with AI. And that's where you get the most value. And what these studies have shown, John, is in order to draw critical interaction from your users, you need to create a mechanism which will make that collaboration happen. And I'll give you an example from our tool. By putting that flight plan in front of the users and saying, you need to set a vision. Do you really understand the motivation why this RFP was issued? Do you know who the competitors are? Do you know what your differentiators are? We are forcing that mechanism of critical interaction to happen, and that gets the best behavior. I completely agree with what Neil Patel says about the combination of the two can make it better.
Right, and that's the key. I think people can't just put their feet up and smoke a cigar and have AI. No, it's like a drill. It's faster than, but you have to control the drill. It's got to be human involvement. You know, I used to have a crystal ball that was pretty accurate, and back in COVID, it broke. I couldn't predict COVID. And so I don't have a crystal. Maybe you've got a crystal ball there, Vishwas. So let's peer into the future, look into 2025. And where is the industry headed, and where are you folks headed?
Well, where we are headed, John, is first and foremost, I talked about all of the advancements that are happening in AI. We are going to take advantage of this. We are going to continue to improve the quality of our response. I talked about some of the challenges even the best and brightest models out there have in terms of quality of writing. They can produce content that can be banal, right? How do we continue to improve the quality of writing? How do you improve the accuracy? We will also focus on better compliance matrices. We already do that, but how can we take it to the next level? In the end, it is all about making incremental progress, collecting the feedback. And John, what I'm really excited about is there is no algorithmic way to say this is a good proposal versus a bad proposal, right? You really have to get a human judgment. And one thing I'm really excited about, you and I talked about this many years ago. I've been part of the Microsoft MVP program for 10, 15 years. Yeah. What I enjoyed about that program was collection of people like myself who were active in the community, providing feedback to Microsoft. And in the process, we learned a lot from other community members. We have, John, gone ahead and created a community of AI champions. These are really influential, thoughtful proposal writers who are working with us to improve the quality of response, how we shape that product. So my hope for the future, no crystal ball here, take the advancements that are coming from AI, learn from our customers, continue to get better, and rinse and repeat.
Well, it's a good thing you don't have I could come over your house and steal that crystal ball from you because I'd like it for the Super Bowl prediction here. So I'll have to worry about that maybe the next time. So January 22nd is the webinar. I'll put the link in the show notes. And maybe the next time we'll sit down at a barbecue place or a brewery somewhere and have another conversation of the changes in the next 6 months or 3 or 4. Maybe it's 3 or 4 months, John, not 6 months anymore. It's great. You have been listening to the Fiddle Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. My guest is Vishwas Lele. He's co-founder and CEO of a company called pWin.ai.